What's up, you beautiful bastards? Another Soul Reaver 2 episode fresh from the oven. Bon appetit. After our tete-a-tete with the owner of the most based power walk in the history, Raziel is left intrigued and spares the yellow daddy for the meantime. I was always in question on what kind of threat could one pose against an entity which can literally disappear or be turned into a swarm of bats, but yeah, the gaming game conventions. Before we throw ourselves into unearthing our destiny, and because we have already touched upon the walking manner of Cain, I'd like to talk precisely about it. Walking. You see, Soul Reaver was made at the times where attention span of many people was a little bit longer than 2 TikTok swipes. So the developers weren't that concerned with how dense the gameplay is or how fast the playable character moves, at least not to the extent of the modern ones. Everybody marveled at the newly appeared 3D graphics, so the slow-paced movement of many characters was normal. Playing this game 20... Jesus, are we old? Years later, the absence of the sprint button in a game where your main occupation is moving forward for very long distances stands out pretty badly. Especially when you have to make footages and record things a few times. So my puny monkey brain began to play the AD chess to get to make this dull process a little less tedious. That's why I am honored to present you the most mathematically precise comparison of movement in Soul Reaver 2. I've just taken a room and moved in it with a timer. The first variable, and the classics of Soul Reaver, and any game actually, the plane running. For our blue sprinter to cover a regular Seraphon hole, it takes around 10 seconds. This is the base amount of time we need to overcome here. While making the footages, I have accidentally uncovered the second variable we need to calculate here, the button mashing type of movement. The monkey in me has triumphed at the time because the camera was moving fast, and those fast twitches looked faster than the regular movement, and it should be faster when it looks faster, right? Yet the NPCs that were catching up with me no problem have proven me wrong. The time in which Razy goes from one part of the hole to another was not that impressive either. Not to mention that such movement pushes more pressure on your thumb than the old school God of War boss battles, so it wouldn't be a viable option, if you're not into it of course. You weirdo. After all of this elaborate scheming and mind games with myself, I came to actually a pretty easy conclusion: to check on the speedrunners. And, well, the answer was pretty obvious as well. Jumping. It's indeed the most efficient way of movement in this game, so now you know. Hope you are glad to spare this amount of your life for this info. Moving on. In the aftermath of the TED Talk from Razy's father, we are met by a subtle hint on how to move on and move on. I've never really touched upon this aspect, but back in the days this realm-changing mechanics was mind-blowing actually. We had a whole location with 2 different layouts, different NPCs, and almost no loading time between them. Soul Reaver is actually a master at hiding loading screens behind opening of the doors and cutscenes, for example. Now it might seem a little annoying to watch a whole small scene of Razy opening doors and then them closing behind him, but back then, in comparison to them giant loading screens between the areas in other games, this Soul Reaver approach would make you really immerse into the world of Nazgûl. Not to mention that Raziel opens doors in a really cool manner most of the time, so yeah, it was very cool. And still is. And yeah, there is also a change in music when you go from one realm to another, yet it's not a completely new composition, but a regular, slightly distorted and made to sound spookier one. Moving forward, Raziel feels being observed. And no wonders. There is a whole bunch of suspiciously camera-looking birds in the proximity. I could never understand why would someone use so many of them just to look after our wraiths. The 2 or 3 of them would do the job alright, but obviously the guy behind it has too big of a budget. Not to mention that the devs couldn't let you go without checking on this cool looking animation, so there is this as well. We meet a door with a suspiciously recognizable fella, and not a less suspicious hole that is suspiciously made to fit the Soul Reaver. Suspicious. We enter this door and check on the obligatory animation of it closing behind us. If you plan to play or replay this game, it will fright the hell out of you in some time. Upon entering, it appears to be some old cave with remnants of a civilization long gone, and meet some dark energy freaks that were actually much easier than I remember them from my childhood, so I've smoked them for the hell of it. The fighting system in this game can be even fun sometimes, not gonna deny this. Unfortunately, we wouldn't get any explanation on what those things are. They have some kind of flicker inside, so I thought that those were the old souls that were awakened to protect this place. Yet those things wouldn't be devoured by the Soul Reaver nor by Razi himself. Although when you press the devour button after defeating them, it influenced those lights apparently, so there are only more questions than answers. If you know what those things are, let me know in the comments. It's for sure not a bait to make you write a comment and promote this video and show me some love. And maybe leave a like afterwards. Not at all. After that, we see that this was a passage to get under the Pillars of Nazgûl, and the place where we meet an old friend of ours. I want you to check this cutscene completely, because in my opinion it's not less important for the establishment of the characters and laying out of the main conflict than the coin flip scene. So, enjoy.
As I entered the chamber, I sensed that it had been sealed for hundreds, perhaps thousands of years. And while this room was clearly built when the pillars were erected, I knew that no human hand could have shaped this place, and that perhaps it had never been seen by human eyes. The surrounding murals depicted a winged race, their features so like my own, but beautiful, where mine were grotesque, and angelic, while mine were demonic. I tried to decipher these images. A great war, but with combatants like none I had ever seen. The pillars, raised by this winged race, who thus defeated their adversaries. The winged beings again, writhing in agony, apparently afflicted with the same bloodthirst I had so recently suffered. And throughout the chamber, inscribed everywhere, images of the Reaver itself. Was this what Cain had urged me to discover? I wondered.
Lies, Raziel. Do not be deceived.
Ah, my ancient benefactor. And I dared to hope we had parted ways forever. Silence was refreshing, but it lasted. No doubt you have a conveniently inexpressible reason for your presence here?
Do not be insolent, Raziel. I am eternally present here and everywhere, now and always. I am the still center of the turning wheel, the hub of this world's destiny.
But perhaps not so omnipotent as you'd have me believe. Your hold on me appears to be tenuous. I no longer seem to need you. Yet I'm guessing you still need me.
This impudence is unworthy of you, Raziel. Do not forget that you have a task to fulfill here. You are indebted to me.
Indebted? You would have me show gratitude for a gift I didn't ask to be bestowed. Do you forget that you forced me to inhabit this vile carcass?
I restored you to yourself, Raziel. It was Cain who destroyed you. The very enemy you've just let slip through your grasp. Do not fail me, my servant.
I serve no one. Not you, not Cain, and not your lackey Mobius.
Mobius is my good servant. I have many.
And if I tell Mobius that he's worshipping a giant squid, do you think his faith will falter?
You have grown willful, Raziel. But beware. To embrace a serpent is to invite poison into your heart. Cain is a sinuous beast. He will seduce and deceive you. You pride yourself on your free will, yet you let that degenerate deter your resolve.
I harbor no illusions about his integrity, nor anyone else's. In fact, I am beset by manipulation on all sides. I merely seek the truth.
These are the fathomless truths, Raziel. The agony of birth and death and rebirth. This is the wheel of fate, the purifying cycle which sustains all life. Vampires are an abomination, a plague which leeches this land of its spiritual strength. They obstruct the flow of life and death. Their souls stagnate in their wretched corpses. But the wheel must turn. Death is inexorable and cannot be denied. Your destiny is irresistible, Raziel. You are my soul reaver, the scourge of the vampires, reaper of their apostate souls. Remain steadfast, end the vampire's parasitic curse, and restore Nosgoth. Cain's blood belongs on your hands.
Cain indeed deserves to die for condemning me to this repugnant form, but if and when I kill him, it will be for me alone to decide.
Cain destroyed you without a flicker of remorse. He tore the soul from your noble corpse, and after you had served him faithfully for 1,000 years, he discarded you in the abyss on a jealous whim. Remember your rage, Raziel. Let it guide your hand.
In this scene, we can see how Raziel has become, as our Mr. Tentacle has observantly noticed, very insolent. There is not a scent of that old Razi who would listen silently to the ElderGod and blindly follow orders. This Raziel is more prideful and observant. However, there is no direct incentive for our race not to listen to the ElderGod, in my opinion, because there is nothing bad that he has done to him, except for the wounded pride of the first lieutenant being called a servant. And I wouldn't think that this was the main reason why Razi showed distrust. I think that the main one is the fact that Mobius has been the servant of Mr. Squid for all of this time as well. And among vampires, the Time Streamer haven't had, let's say, a reputation of the most reliable men.
The Oracle's Cave, where Cain's first fateful meeting with Mobius occurred. Mobius played the role of a doddering soothsayer, stirring his pot of visions while dispensing enigmatic predictions to gullible visitors. Underneath the facade was Mobius the Time Streamer, sorcerer of the Circle of Nine, a ruthless manipulator with the power to bend time. Since his murder at Cain's hands centuries ago, these caves have stood vacant, though, like Mobius himself, they are rumored to be only a facade for a much larger, more elaborate complex.
So in my opinion, this combination of shady worshippers and the pride of the ElderGod made Raziel resent him. Feeling that his grasp over our soul devourer is slipping away, Mr. Tentacle plays on the same vice of Razi that Cain and Mobius played on to manipulate him: rage. ElderGod plays on it to make Razi kill Cain, Mobius played on it to make him kill Cain, and even the Cain himself played on it to, you guessed it, kill Cain. Some people never learn, I guess. There is also a circle of murals that depict the life of the ancient vampires, and the most attentive players could add 2 and 2 and get to the conclusion that the curse which all vampires were blessed with was obtained in a war with some kind of another very powerful race. We won't know what race that was for now, yet we've gotten another piece of the puzzle. It's also worth noticing that the ElderGod has his mane sit in the middle of the pillars, suspiciously making him look like a parasite driving the energy from them. His tentacles also don't cover as much of the place as it was in the future, where at the beginning of the first Soul Reaver we would practically move through a giant cave completely covered with them. In the time of Soul Reaver 2, we also ain't constantly bombarded by the telepathical snaps from Mr. Squid, which Raziel himself rose to appreciate.
The silence was refreshing, but it lasted.
So we can only deduce that in this time, despite the fact that pillars were corrupted for like 10 minutes, the ElderGod is in a much weaker state compared to the future. All of this doesn't add up quite right with the balance restoring notion from him, and makes this situation even more convoluted. Moving on. I like the fact that it's possible to take a swim in the soup where the ElderGod marinates. You can't interact with him on neither of the planes, but if you would stay there for a while, you could hear some hidden lines from our many-eyed friend.
Tread carefully, Raziel. Your destiny beckons.
We move through an underwater passage, go over some dark blob guys, see more holes that look suspiciously interactable, and go on. There is more signs of this civilization, and without a doubt, we observe the remains of what the ancient vampires have built. By emerging on the surface, we get into the favorite place of Miyazaki and unravel the person behind the crows talking, Vorador. The man-beast vanishes without saying anything, but Raziel sees it as a welcome and continues after him. At the place we can't get any traces of the Green Wolfman, but we find something more interesting. An old temple designed to be opened by, you guessed it, Soul Reaver. But in order to unravel its secrets, you need to go through some charades and kill a few mummies. We also see a few murals that once again illustrate the importance of the Soul Reaver for the ancients. The forges in this game were a great move forward in comparison to the good old cubicle riddles, but not without their flaws. Firstly, the NPCs inside. When you move from one room to another, they respawn and don't allow you to move forward normally. Most of the time it's not that annoying, but when they block your way for the 5th time, because you're too dumb to do it at the first attempt, it is. Secondly, the puzzles themselves. Let's take for example this room. You come inside and it seems to be clear. You need to move this thing into the middle of the eclipse. Done. The hovering menu tells you without a stop that you can use telekinesis to interact with the object. So, that's what I did. It's the first instance where you need to use this feature, so if you played for the first time, good luck even finding it at all. But after all of this, nothing happens. I mean, with how dramatic and exalted the dialogues in this game are, we can't really expect it to be condescending to the players. Yet we get cutscenes like this all the time.
Here I discovered an ancient ruin, unmistakably one of Mobius's time-streaming chambers, but long ago sealed and abandoned to the encroaching swamp. I didn't currently possess the means to break this seal, but I thought in time that I might. There appeared to be a passage here, leading northward into the mountains. The opening, however, was obstructed and too high for me to reach. Perhaps later I would find the means to bypass these obstacles, and Mobius's time-streaming device would provide me passage. But first, I had to find a way back into the stronghold, and I suspected I would find the means within the lake's mysterious shrine.
I find them a little bit undermining and immersive break-in, but most likely necessary. Yet here, using this feature of telekinesis for the first time and moving our head upwards for the first time as well, I'd expect maybe some more hints, especially considering how the game leads you by the hand the whole time. A small arrow upwards or you can break walls to get some sunlight message would save an hour of my life. In my opinion, it's kind of inconsistent and weird, but I think I'm just dumb and nitpick here. Anyways, an hour of frustration later, Razy acquires his first power-up, the Dark Reaver, which you can reapply after bathing the Reaver in the basins scattered all over Nazgûl. Another questionable solution, but whatever. As it goes, I try to give you some real-life references for the architecture of the places we visit, yet everything was already done by the guys from Legacy of Kain Wiki, thank them for that, so here is a part from it. The general environment also bears architectural elements from real-world ancient temples, with which much of the architecture of the ruins and designs for Soul Reaver 2 are inspired by real-world ancient Cambodian temples and the architecture and scenery of the Khmer Empire and Angkor regions. In particular, structures such as Angkor Wat, hope I pronounced it right, and Ta Prohm. After leaving the forge, we have our first up close with the Green Goblin, and I leave this piece uncut as well.
You're a ragged excuse for a savior.
Vorador.
I see my reputation precedes me.
It does.
All good, I hope? I've been watching you since you emerged from that accursed stronghold. Strange that your arrival coincides with the corruption of the Pillars. But I'm wondering, are you the catalyst of these events? Or the answer to them?
I don't know what you mean.
I will speak plainly then. I distrust your origins, stranger. Seeing you crawl from the putrid depths of Mobius's keep makes me question your purpose here. And what should I make of your appearance? Not human, clearly, and more demon than vampire. And the Pillars. It is no mere coincidence that your arrival in that clearing heralded the Pillars' decay. And so I ask you plainly, are you the instrument of the Pillars' destruction, or their salvation?
Neither.
Very well. Let us look at the other side of the coin. I have followed your journey and watched as you blithely unlocked secrets that have been sealed and forbidden for thousands of years. The path you have been treading is open to only one being. You don't know what you are, do you?
I have been many things. If you find me ignorant, enlighten me.
What's the point? This world is beyond redemption. Let the human cattle have it.
I would expect better than meek capitulation from you.
Centuries of persecution have taught me well. 500 years ago, our race was nearly exterminated by the fanatical crusades of the Seraphan. And now the same sick drama unfolds again. In merely a decade, Mobius's cutthroat citizen army has nearly accomplished what the Seraphan could not. Vampires meddling in the affairs of men. Look where it's brought us.
What am I to make of these secrets I've uncovered, then? The depictions of the winged race, the pillars, and the Reaver.
Fairy tales, boy. The delusions of an ancient culture clinging to hope long after the world had discarded them. Their bloodline trickled away, until only one of the ancients remained, sustained solely by obligation and his unfaltering faith in the old prophecies. But you see, even if you are who you appear to be, it no longer matters. You're simply too late. Janos Audron, the Reaver Guardian, the last of the ancients, and my maker, was murdered by the Seraphan nearly 5 centuries ago. He alone would have the answers you seek, but his secrets died with him. I don't know how you've come even this far without his guidance, or without the Reaver, stolen these 500 years ago by the Seraphan. I'm afraid, my friend, that you and all of us are out of luck.
I had no less reason to trust Vorador than anyone else I had met. In fact, the ancient vampire was the most forthright being I had encountered thus far. If Janos Audron was the key to all this, then I would find him.
I think that the dialogues in this game work that well not in the last place because of the insertion of pretty regular lines and other time very exalted word combinations and terms, like this here for example.
Vorador.
I see my reputation precedes me.
It does.
All good, I hope?
It's interesting to see that Vorador is not less surprised by appearance than we by his. What's more interesting, this wasn't the first crusade that the Seraphan began. There was another one from 500 years ago. Janos Audron, the last ancient vampire, appeared to be also the last keeper of the Soul Reaver back then. Yet he was whacked. So we've got now another objective. Move back in time and have a chit-chat with our similar-looking ancestor. I freaking love the insertion of Vorador here. He is as badass as he was in the first game and pretty damn charismatic as well. I just love this character very much. And before we wrap this episode up, we need to get past the tentacles of our squid friend. So here is another cutscene of Raziel going on his nerves. Enjoy.
Ah, my wayward child returns.
Having unearthed more than you'd like, I suspect. What am I to make of these ruins that litter the land, and these images here in this chamber?
Merely the deceits of a failed civilization. You are being misled, Raziel. This ancient race hoped to manipulate the future with these scrawled misdirections. You must tread carefully. There are dark forces at work in this world, bent on subverting your true destiny.
I have no doubt of that. The question is, am I in their presence right now?
Your arrogance will spell your demise, Raziel. Deny my will, and the arc of your destiny will reach a sudden conclusion.
Your threats are unmoving. Even now, I'm beyond your reach.
My reach is longer than you realize. This is a very dangerous game you're playing, Raziel.
I think that's that for today. Thank you, peeps, for bearing with me for another vid. Please leave a comment, a sacrifice to the ElderGod, a like and a subscription. Stay tuned because there is more to come. I love you. Have a good one.